Welcome back to another YouTube video on my YouTube channel. Today we're going to be finishing the 3-4 philosophy mind and body unit, and we're going to be discussing Thomas Nagel and his text, What Is It Like to Be a Bat? Let's begin. So Nagel's argument about the relationship between the mind and the body actually rejects Smart's theory about the mind and the body. So as we know, Smart was a physicalist, and Nagel rejects physicalism, the theory that everything can be reduced to the physical and that all mental phenomena can be reduced down to just brain mechanisms. So Nagel rejects this and he doesn't believe in this at all. So even though he rejects this theory, it's important to remember he doesn't try and disprove Smart's theory or any other physicalist theories. He just pretty much says that it's not enough ground to make a claim for the relationship between the mind and the body. So there are 3 main types of physicalism that Nagel rejects. So write those down, as there are some examples that I'll say with them, and it's easier to understand Nagel's theory if you have a better understanding of physicalism. So the first physicalist theory that Nagel rejects is behaviorism. Behaviorism was mentioned briefly in Smart's video. Smart actually also rejects behaviorism as well as Nagel. So behaviorism rejects feelings and paints them as behaviors instead. So like pain, for example, behaviorists reject pain and paint that as pain behavior. So it paints all feelings as just physical behaviors. And an example that's used to explain behaviorism is the story of the limp, which Mr. Beekman told us all at the start of the year. So when somebody says they have a limp, their language implies that a limp is a literal thing, but there is no literal limp. It is just limping behavior, just as pain is pain behavior. So this is the first physicalist theory that Nagel rejects. And the second physicalist theory is functionalism. So functionalism says that if a thing behaves like a mind, if it thinks, affirms, and denies, then it is a mind. And an example to explain functionalism is a tree. So a tree affirms sunlight and it denies shadow. Therefore, according to this theory, it is a mind as it functions like a mind. So Nagel also rejects this. And the third physicalist theory that Nagel rejects is identity theory. So just like I said before, Nagel rejects Smart's identity theory that mental states are just brain processes. So now we'll talk about how and why Nagel actually rejects these physicalist theories. Nagel uses consciousness to support his arguments against physicalism. And consciousness is a subjective phenomenon. We each have our individual consciousness. We can't share it with anybody else, and no one else can know what our consciousness is like except us. And Nagel says that if consciousness is a subjective phenomenon, then there is no way to analyze it in terms of physical objective phenomena, which is what physicalist theories aim to do. So there are 3 key points to Nagel's argument that you should write down. Number 1, he argues that reductionist theories fail to capture and explain what it is actually like to have consciousness or what it is like to be. The second point is that he argues that consciousness can't be analysed in terms of functional or intentional states. There's no way to reduce consciousness to the physical. And here he also rejects both dualism and physicalism. And the third point is that Nagel rejects behaviorism because behaviorism rejects inner first-person experiences and it only focuses on how you present to the public or your observable demonstrations of consciousness. Now let's talk about the bat thought experiment. So the bat thought experiment talks about how we might be able to imagine what it's like for us to live and behave like a bat. We can imagine living as a bat. We can imagine what it's like to fly, be nocturnal, use echolocation, all of these things that bats do. But we can't imagine what it is like for a bat to be a bat. Nagel says that this isn't a problem of subjectivity, because it's not that we can't experience typical bat-like experiences, because humans and bats have things in common, and bats and other animals have things in common. It's that we cannot learn these bat experiences objectively, because a bat's experience is subjective. And Nagel says that if we reduce these bat experiences down to the physical, it takes away the subjective part of a bat's experience. And when you take away the subjective experience of what it's like for a bat to be a bat, you're taking away what it's actually like for a bat to be a bat. So I'll read out 2 quotes. You don't have to memorize them or anything, but they might help you understand what he's trying to say even more. So the first one is, there is something that it is like to be that organism and something that it is like for that organism. And the second one is, For if the facts of experience, facts about what it is like for the experiencing organism, are accessible only from one point of view, then it is a mystery how the true character of experiences could be revealed in the physical operation of that organism. So that's the bat thought experiment done. And just remember that the bat thought experiment just represents his theory. It's not only about bats, this is his theory, and he's just using bats as an example of a way to explain. And there are two key ways that Nagel rejects physicalism, and write both of these down because they're really important to his theory. Number one, Nagel says physicalist theories, behaviorism, functionalism, and identity theory, can't capture and understand consciousness, as when it reduces, it moves away from the subjective to the objective, whereas consciousness must stay in the subjective as it is what things are like from a subjective point of view. And number two, Nagel says that physicalism tries to give objective characterization of mental phenomena, but consciousness doesn't need science, and physical language cannot capture this conscious experience because of its reduction. So Nagel concludes his text by saying that we must temporarily put aside the relationship of the mind and the brain and aim to achieve a more objective understanding of mental on its own first. Okay, so that is all of Nagel's text, What Is It Like to Be a Bat? And so I'll give you a quick summary. I'll give you 4 points, just summarizing everything that he said throughout the text. Number one, he focuses on consciousness. Number two, he rejects physicalism because they reduce to just the physical instead of focusing on a subjective point of view. Number three, he says that there is something that it is like to be a bat. And number four, he thinks that we need to focus on consciousness before we move on to the relationship between the mind and the body. Thank you for watching my video.